Hello, everyone. We're going to get started. Thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. My name is Bridget Burns. I'm the Executive Director of the Women's Environment and Development Organization, and we're here today to talk about the Gender Action Plan and what is currently at stake here at COP30 as we try to leave here with a strong outcome in Belém. We're really honored today to have with us one of a key and one of the strongest and most consistent voices we have had fighting at the intersection of gender equality, human rights, and climate justice, the incomparable Mary Robinson, to start us off with a bit of what's happening here and what we need to call on parties to do in these last few days. Over to you, Mary.
Well, thank you, Bridget, for the invitation to join you at this press conference in support of the Gender Action Plan. We call it the GAP, but actually we've too many gaps in Belém. This is the only gap we really need to hold on to in full. And the reason is that gender equality is a precondition for effective climate action. Gender equality isn't an add-on to climate policy. It's a measure of its effectiveness. When women and gender diverse people are at the table, climate policies are more ambitious, more inclusive, and more durable. Since COP7, parties have reaffirmed gender equality, including, obviously, the Lima work programme on gender renewal last year in Baku. Current pushback is part of a global backlash against rights of women and girls and must be rejected. Weakening agreed language undermines climate ambition, and it's completely new in this system, and it's not acceptable. Gender-responsive action strengthens mitigation, adaptation, resilience, and community leadership. And Bridget, I'm hearing that the word gender in the just transition section, in adaptation, in finance, it's been put in square brackets, and nothing else has been offered. Just take out gender. I mean, how crazy can you be? I mean, I've been at probably fewer COPs I know than you, but quite a few COPs, and this is just not acceptable. We know that women and girls and gender diverse people suffer much more from the shocks of climate and the nature shocks. We know that they're the ones building resilience in their communities. So I'm glad, I must say, that the European Union and Norway and Canada and other countries, and we need more countries, are pushing to protect the current language, which allows for a more inclusive, intersectional definition. And I'm aware that civil society groups like WEDO, that Bridget leads, are strongly advocating for inclusion of gender diversity, security on reproductive health and rights, and structural gender justice. And that feminist and climate justice organizations also push for robust financing, for disaggregated data, and for leadership mechanisms. So basically, our call to the parties is, the work was done in Bonn by those who understand our world, the world where climate is having a very adverse gender impact. We understand that gender impact in its totality. They've done a good job. All we need to do is hold on firmly to what they have done, honour the commitments, and deliver a coherent and resourced gender action plan. That's the gap we want, and the only gap we want in Belém. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mary, for really hitting it home as to what is at stake here. And I know some of you may be new to the Gender Action Plan itself, but as Mary so clearly laid out, this is not a new concept. This is both agreed language across the multilateral process, as well as being an agreed principle in this convention. And what we are seeing here is not just an alarming, coordinated backtrack on language, as Mary identified, across negotiating items, but it's actually the idea of footnoting. We have currently 6 footnotes in the draft.
We've never had that before.
Not footnotes in a way that is trying to determine what what language means to each and every party. And we not only see this as alarming to the Gender Action Plan, but if we think about it in relation to multilateralism as a whole, if parties are all of a sudden saying, well, this is what finance means for us, and this is what ambition means for us, it's not what we come to this process to do, and it's certainly not acceptable when it comes to the Gender Action Plan. Mary is going to have to leave us, but we did want to pause here to see if there were any particular questions that the audience might have while we still have you. Yes, and I think someone has the mic. There we go.
Hi, thanks for this press conference. I'm Georgina Ranod from BBC News. What's driving this pushback against the language around gender equality? And can you sort of sum up in a big sense, what's at stake? What does this mean for women around the world?
What's driving it is a reactionary element in a lot of countries now. We've always had fights on the Gender Action Plan. And we know, Saudi Arabia and Iran and to a certain extent the Vatican and other, differences, but this is different. This is trying to actually push women back by having this binary definition, which has nothing to do with the gender impacts of climate and nature, the shocks that are felt by the most vulnerable, which include the most diverse. So it's so cruel. I mean, it's actually unbelievable that this would enter into our space. So those who know what the Gender Action Plan is about, we've had previous plans, we had the Lima thing, they know how to move forward, which we must, on countering the disproportionate impacts, negative impacts on women, girls, gender diverse people, and also recognizing their contribution, recognizing that inclusiveness helps climate policy. And so this is a very important fight, and I agree very much with Bridget. We cannot have footnotes allowing people to define in a different way concepts that have had one meaning throughout and need to have an agreed meaning in order to make any sense and to have proper climate policy. So please help us to get this, the work that was done in Bonn. It's very simple. We don't even need any changes in it. Just agree it. Just go with it, because these are the experts. They know the problems, and they have done a lot of very good work, and they know what they're doing for a very long time. And we do not want a spoiler.
That was very dramatic, Mary. It's the seeds. Yes. Well, with this fortuitous note, we still have a press conference to share with you. We're going to let Mary go. Thank you so much for being with us and for that empowering call, which nature feels as well and is echoing, bellowing us to follow your lead. Thank you so much, Mary. I want to say before I pass to my colleagues Mwanahamisi and Michelle, who are going to answer the second part of your question, and then I promise we will take some more, about why are we fighting for a gap, not just what is happening in terms of backtrack. I did want to slightly answer your question a little bit in that this is not new in this process. We have had to really fight to maintain agreed language around gender equality in every negotiation where we have had this on the agenda. And I would say there is an element in this last 2 years where there's a more coordinated pushback that has certainly been emboldened by elections around the world that have shifted countries to the right, by the US election, and we see that the US administration is doing this in multilateral spaces as well, not just challenging issues that they had challenged in their first administration around sexual and reproductive health and rights, but actually challenging the understanding and notion of gender equality as a whole. And so we do see that is a coordinated pushback. However, we also see a much stronger and more coordinated pushback to the pushback, if you will. And I would point all of you to a statement that was launched at the start of COP that was by a number of negotiating parties representing 92 countries, stating their commitment to gender equality and human rights in this process, as well as a strong outcome on the Gender Action Plan. Because there was an awareness of what we might face in this process, and I think, as Mary said here, we're really demanding that political courage of those countries who started this COP out saying that this was their priority. But with that, to really share our vision for why we fight for the Gender Action Plan, the Lima Work Program on Gender under this COP, I'll pass over to Mwanahamisi.
Thank you so much, Bridget. Just to also be, okay, thank you so much. Just to also add to what Bridget has said before I go to the priorities, I think for women in gender constituency and for everyone who is in this process, we do recognize as well that the limitation that comes from framework that adopted in this process, including most of the decisions that have been done or have been adopted in terms of the lack of implementation at times, but also the constraints of getting to a decision based on the consensus. So with that full recognition, we still believe strongly that the Gender Action Plan, and we have had this in the rooms with the negotiator, but also with the government, is a critical tool to advance gender equality in the context of climate change. For the almost like 2 years work now, from developing the actual work program and the work that we have done throughout the year to now, we have seen some of progress that have been made in the current text, if you remove what has been bracketed. And some of those progress that have been made in terms of the activities and the language that is there, we believe strongly that some of them, when adopted and when this gap is adopted, will really strengthen coherence. In terms of policy coherence within the UNFCCC processes. So there is strong several activities that aligns or mandate, for example, within the UNFCCC, every agenda item, constituted bodies and implementation body to really embed in making sure that there is gender responsiveness on their work, including, for example, some of the new innovation that has been brought this year, including making specific and naming induction of the co-lead, co-facilitators, the new chair that are coming and inducting them on the gender mainstreaming and gender responsive climate action. So those activities that will making sure that we are not only fighting for gender in the gender room, but it is mainstreamed in all the UNFCCC. But more importantly, when it comes to coherence, we have seen there are several activities that are now mandating national governments and parties to integrate gender and gender equality in their national plan, including, for example, NAPS, NDC, etc. And again, there is a commitment in the current version of the GAP that mandate integration with the Rio Convention and other gender instruments. So that we believe, like when adopted, the Belém Gender Action Plan will really take us a step closer to building coherence. As all of you know, in most of the government, this process is siloed. Even within the UNFCCC, this process is siloed. So we are hoping that to be achieved with adoption of the new GAP. And secondly, when it comes to participation, the GAP, the current version of the GAP is making some deliberate efforts not only to open up the participation of the women from the women in the delegation, but also civil society, but also to be intentional on meaningful inclusion, including, for example, protecting them from violence, so having concrete activities that are protecting women's rights defenders, creating safe spaces as we engage in the COP process, but also in the national processes. And that, to us, we believe is the step in the right direction. The GAP, as well as creating space where we can, for the first time, potentially, we could really walk the talk on intersectionality. There is an introduction of other thematic areas, for example, sexual reproductive health and rights, issues related to sexual gender-based violence, and these are the issues that really speaks to the intersectional aspect of the GAP. And we are hoping and we are calling for parties to make sure that we really guard that language and making sure that the emerging issues are secured in the gap so that we are able to address those issues. And last, before I move pass back to you, Bridget, we believe that gap in the current, if you look at the activities under D, they did create conducive environment for coordination, building capacity, but also supporting country to generate gender responsive data and gender disaggregated data. And this is a step in the right direction because, as you all know, that we have a significant issue when it comes to the production, analysis and use of gender disaggregated data. Most countries don't have capacity for that, and there are strong activities that will, at the end of the day, support countries to be able to generate and analyze and potentially use gender disaggregated data to inform decision, because we do know that our decision is as good as the data that inform them. So we are really looking forward for this gap to be adopted, for it to be an ambitious gap, and calling all parties to make sure that they deliver nothing less than ambitious gap that will move us forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'd love to turn to Michelle. Please introduce yourself, just to share a little bit about where we are right now and why a decision, the BLM gap, is so important.
Thanks, Bridget. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mishi Ferreti. I'm from Alziras Institute, which is also a member of the Women and Gender constituency. I want to share with you that all this discussion about women leadership and gender-centered climate action is not something that started today. From Rio 92 to BLM COP30, we have watched the different generations of women fighting for environmental justice. We had this historical tent in Rio 92 called Planeta Fêmea, or Female Planet, that was put up by feminists to push forward this discussion. And 33 years later, here we are again. Trying to do the same thing. And I think it's very important for us to understand that deliver the BLM gap is very important because it shows the commitment of the global leaders with those who are defending actually territories and biodiversity. We cannot forget the importance of recognizing this place where we are. We are talking directly from the Amazon. We are talking directly from the country where all this climate governance discussion started 33 years ago. And it's fundamental that this gap recognizes Amazonian women, including indigenous communities, Black and women, and women, girls of African descent, because they are also those who are on the front line and who most suffer the differentiated impacts, especially when we look at within Brazil and also Latin America, and also the riverine women who are all leading these resistance and having their territories and their bodies violented. So we are fighting against gender-based violence. We want the recognition of the role of that women who are environmental and human rights defenders are playing for nature and for sustaining life. It's important us to have recognized the role of the care work that is pushed forward by women who are carrying literally the world on their backs. And also that we have this intersectional approach whenever we talk about women, gender, and climate, because we must recognize that women is not a homogeneous group, and all these differences must be taken into account, including gender diverse people. And in the end, I think it's fundamental for us to understand that we have a whole bunch of human rights language already agreed in different documents, so we must have coherence with what's being discussed here at the UNFCCC, with what has already been discussed in a whole bunch of other spaces. And we must remember that I would like to remind President Lula and the negotiators from Brazil that President Lula was mainly elected by women in this country, and it's time to honor those who put them into power. So feminists are here not only to hold the backlashes, but we are here to reimagine what climate governance can be. Thank you very much.
So with that, we're happy to take a few questions. If there were some, I see 2 here, 1 and 2. We'll take both and then we'll come back to you.
Okay, thank you so much. My name is Irene Tonchire and I come from Uganda. My question is, how can we ensure that the gender action plan is actually being acted on? It shouldn't be really on paper or on policy, but also in action. How can we ensure that? And again, I've really realized from what Mary talked about, gender, it has been really every now and then, every COP we talk about gender action plan. I think it shouldn't be now a discussion point. It should be a non-negotiable point at this time and in other COPs to come. It should be a priority for us as women from Global South and other indigenous communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And there was one other colleague. Yes.
Hello, my name is Dr. Angela Look from the School of Gender, Sexuality, and Women's Studies from York University. I'm also a member of the Big Stone Cree Nation, a First Nation in Northern Alberta in Canada. I just want to ask, can you speak to how dangerous it is for gender to be removed from all of these different negotiations and all of this language? Because I really feel that an intersectional approach in the policies and also in collecting disaggregated data is very important, especially as an Indigenous woman, and also recognizing that, you know, it's Indigenous women on the front lines, and we're the most impacted by gendered violence in resource extraction areas like my homeland. So can you speak to how dangerous it's actually terrifying as an Indigenous woman to see the word gender removed, because then you'll remove race, then you'll remove class, then you'll remove indigeneity and Black women from these policies and poor women. Like this is actually very scary and very dangerous. Can you speak to the danger of moving away from gender and an intersectional approach?
Thank you, and you did so beautifully as well. So thank you for not just asking a question, but adding that really critical context. I wonder yes, please, go ahead. Go ahead.
All right, so the first question in terms of like how the gender has been worked on, from the women and gender constituency, so the first gap that we had was very, like most of the activities in the gap were led by the Secretariat. Of course, there is a number of countries that developed their own gap, but that was not mandated. And we did had, when the Secretariat had a review, that is one of the strong feedback that they received, not only from the civil society, but also from the governments themselves. So if you look at the current version of the draft now, there is a number of the activities that will be led by the government and national government, to be specific. So we do hope that will happen. And also the UNFCCC has a reporting mechanism. But more importantly, I think in terms of making sure that gap is being implemented at country level, it's the role me and you can play to hold our government accountable, to make sure that they really use the global mechanism to advance local action, because there is a significant gap of what is happening at the global level and how it's implemented at the national level. So we are really, as the Women and Gender Constituency as well, inviting our members, the allies and partners, when the decision has been adopted, to really engage at the community level, at national level, to make sure that we collectively advance gender equality and intersection of the climate. And in terms of your second question, in terms of the focus, so the gap that is being adopted now is a 9-year gap. We do believe as soon as it is adopted, the conversation from next year will move from negotiating the gender action plan to how do we implement, and the conversation that follows. And it is a standing agenda item as of now, and we look forward to engaging in implementation of the gap to the women and gender constituency, but also to most of the feminists. We really advocated for the long-term mandate, exactly to the reason that you are saying that we cannot have coming here every day to negotiate the same thing. So the 10-year work program and 9-year gender action plan give us a good time frame to implement. And to the last question in terms of the danger of removing gender, while the gender is real, I just wanted to speak to as a feminist and advocate. While the gender is real, the danger is real on the efforts from the government. I wish to assure you as a feminist that we won't allow that to happen. So we'll fight to the back, we'll fight to the end to make sure that gender continue to be in these rooms, continue to be in the discussion, because our identity should not be questionable. Our livelihood and our lives as women, as gender diverse people, should not be a privilege. We are here because we are people, and we will fight to the core to make that happen.
Thank you for that, Mishi. Michelle, would you like 1 minute to add anything? We don't, I think is it very short? We have two, no, I don't think we have time for another question, unfortunately. If you'd like to add anything quick in 1 minute.
Yeah, I'll just like to add that President Lula started the assembly here at the UNFCCC saying that this is the COP of the truth and this is the COP of the implementation. So may this also be the COP of the women. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. If anyone has follow-up questions on what the Gender Action Plan is in terms of technically, where is it placed in the process, we have many, many experts outside in the room who are very eager to talk to you about what kind of pressure we're looking for and hoping to push for in the next few days. And so I'll just end by quoting once again, incomparable Mary Robinson, who said, "There are far too many gaps in this process right now. We want only one gap out of BELEM, and that is the Gender Action Plan." Thank you very much.